Carl Jung once uncovered a dangerous truth. When the empath meets the narcissist, one of two things happens. Either the empath is shattered completely, or they emerge transformed into something Jung had rarely seen before, a sovereign empath, someone who can feel everything yet remain untouchable, compassionate yet immune to manipulation. In this video, we'll explore Jung's most unsettling discovery: why narcissistic abuse can either destroy the empath or awaken their final stage of evolution. The empath and the narcissist, a dangerous dance. To understand Jung's discovery, we must first understand the two characters at the heart of this story, the empath and the narcissist. The empath is highly sensitive. They feel what others feel. They take in emotions like a sponge takes in water. Their gift is compassion. Their weakness is boundaries. The narcissist is the opposite, brilliant at performance, hungry for admiration, but empty at the core. They cannot truly feel the inner world of others. Instead, they manipulate emotions to feed their fragile self-image. When these two meet, a dangerous dance begins. The empath gives endlessly. The narcissist takes relentlessly. The empath believes their love can heal. The narcissist believes they are entitled to that love. Jung wrote that the empath becomes what he called psychically dissolved. Their sense of self begins to blur. They no longer know where their feelings end and where the narcissists begin. But here is the paradox. This suffering is not meaningless. Jung observed that in this crucible of pain, something extraordinary can happen. The narcissist becomes an unconscious teacher. By forcing the empath to confront betrayal, cruelty, and manipulation, they also force the empath to face the darkest corners of their own shadow. Jung believed this confrontation was brutal, but essential, because the empath who survives does not simply recover. They are reborn, not as who they were before, but as something entirely new. The three deaths of the empath. Jung observed that empaths who endured narcissistic abuse did not just suffer, they experienced what he called three deaths. The first death is the death of the idealized self. The empath has always seen themselves as purely good, always giving, always healing. But under the manipulation of the narcissist, this image shatters. They are forced to see their own anger, their own selfishness, their own capacity for darkness. The mask of perfect goodness dies. The second death is the death of the belief in love's omnipotence. For years, the empath clings to the hope, if I just love enough, I can fix them. But the narcissist cannot be healed this way. No amount of sacrifice will fill the void inside them. The empath's fantasy that love can rescue anyone must die. The third death is the most painful. It is the death of needing external validation to feel worthy. The narcissist gives approval only to take it away. They build the empath up, only to tear them down, until the empath realizes, my worth cannot live in someone else's hands. The desperate need for recognition dies. Jung wrote that these deaths feel like annihilation. The empath collapses into despair, believing their very soul has been destroyed. But he saw something deeper. These deaths are not endings, they are initiations. The false self dies, so the true self can emerge. Illusions are stripped away, so wisdom can be born. In Jung's words, the narcissist is the shadow mirror. They force the empath to see what gentle introspection never could. And those who survive these three deaths step into the possibility of transformation, the possibility of becoming something Jung called the sovereign empath. From wounded to sovereign, the alchemy of shadow integration. After the three deaths comes the most dangerous passage of all. Not recovery, not a return to who they once were, but transformation. Jung called it psychological alchemy, the turning of poison into medicine, the metamorphosis from wounded empath to sovereign empath. At first, the empath feels broken, permeable to every emotion, haunted by every manipulation. But in the crucible of abuse, something begins to change. Where once they absorbed everything, they start to filter. Where once they drowned in others' pain, they begin to breathe underwater. Where once they craved validation, they now stand in their own worth. Jung described this shift as shadow integration. The empath stops pretending they are only light. They face their own darkness, their anger, their desire for control, their hidden pride. And by owning it, they become immune to the hooks of the narcissist. No longer projecting their shadow outward, they carry it consciously within. Jung called this new ability conscious permeability, to feel without fixing, to understand without absorbing, to love without losing themselves. This is not numbness, it is mastery. It is the ability to choose, what will I let in, what will I deflect, what belongs to me, and what does not. Jung wrote of one patient, "She has achieved something I thought impossible. She feels the depths of another's suffering, without drowning in it. She detects deception instantly, yet responds with compassion. She is untouchable, yet profoundly human." This is the alchemy of shadow. The empath is no longer merely a wounded healer. They become sovereign. Their empathy, no longer a weakness, but a source of power. Yet Jung warned, this transformation is not without cost, because once you integrate the shadow, you can never return to unconscious innocence. You see too clearly, you feel too deeply, and that clarity changes everything. The sovereign empath, gift and burden. When the empath reaches sovereignty, they become something rare, something Jung himself struggled to describe. They can feel without drowning. They can detect manipulation instantly, yet remain untouched by it. They can hold another's pain without mistaking it for their own. Jung called this empathic sovereignty, the highest stage of empathic development, a consciousness forged in fire, a soul tempered by shadow. But here is the paradox. The very transformation that makes them powerful also sets them apart. Jung wrote, "They have eaten from the tree of psychological knowledge, and like Adam and Eve, they can never return to the garden of unconscious innocence." The sovereign empath sees too much. They look into a room, and the masks fall away. They hear the words, but also the hidden motive beneath. They can sense projection, ego defense, and manipulation before the other person even knows they are doing it. This vision is a gift, but it is also a burden, because most people do not want to be seen so clearly. They recoil, they feel exposed. They call the empath cold, distant, changed. Jung called this the prophet's isolation, rejected not for being wrong, but for seeing too deeply. Friendships dissolve, families pull away. Ordinary conversations feel shallow, like trying to breathe in air too thin. One patient told Jung, "It is as if I can see the machinery of every mind around me. Their defenses, their wounds, their projections. It is all transparent now. But this clarity has cost me almost every relationship I had." The sovereign empath becomes both healer and exile. They carry wisdom beyond their years, yet pay with loneliness. This is the burden of their gift. To walk in a world that feels blind. To see the unconscious in action, while knowing most cannot see it themselves. And yet, Jung believed this stage was essential. Because these sovereign empaths, though isolated, are the bridges between unconscious humanity and the possibility of true psychological awakening. The dangers and traps of sovereignty. Reaching sovereignty does not mean the journey is over. In fact, Jung warned it may be the most dangerous stage of all, because the sovereign empath, though powerful, still walks a razor's edge. And at this height of consciousness, there are traps. The first trap, spiritual superiority. After surviving the crucible, some empaths believe their suffering makes them enlightened. They look down on others still lost in projection. They confuse survival with sainthood. Jung cautioned, the moment one believes they are beyond shadow, they are possessed by it. The second trap, perpetual healing. Some become addicted to transformation itself. They chase every therapy, every ritual, every new modality. But healing becomes consumption. They never embody their growth. They only collect it. Jung called this therapeutic materialism. The third trap, isolation addiction. Having outgrown ordinary relationships, some empaths withdraw completely. They mistake solitude for strength. But Jung reminded, the sovereign empath serves through engagement, not withdrawal. The bridge must remain connected, even if the path is lonely. The fourth trap, revenge. Perhaps the most subtle. With their new psychological sight, some empaths use their insight to wound. A cutting remark here, a quiet manipulation there, punishment disguised as truth. Jung warned, true integration transforms the desire for revenge into compassion for the unconscious. These traps are seductive because they mimic sovereignty, while pulling the empath back into shadow. That is why Jung insisted on vigilance. Daily shadow check-ins. Asking, am I acting from clarity or from projection? From compassion or from superiority? From truth or from the wound that still aches? Sovereignty is not a throne to sit upon. It is a practice, a discipline, a constant return to humility. Jung believed the sovereign empath's power lies not in being untouchable, but in being accountable, not in declaring themselves above others, but in walking the path of integration over and over again. The metamorphosis, from wound to wisdom. Jung described the empath's evolution as a series of metamorphoses, not recovery, not a return to who they were before, but a transformation so complete that the old self can never return. He documented 5 metamorphoses, each like a stage of alchemy, each a death and a rebirth. Metamorphosis 1, the dissolution. This is the breaking point. During the abuse, the empath's identity collapses. The self-image they once clung to shatters. Jung called it blessed disintegration. Painful, yes, but necessary. The false self dies, so the true self may be born. Metamorphosis 2, the descent. After the abuse, the empath enters the underworld, a long night of the soul, depression, isolation, darkness. Jung said this is not sickness, but psychological composting. Old beliefs decay, fertilizing the ground for something new. Metamorphosis 3, the integration. Slowly, the empath begins to claim their shadow. They admit their anger, they acknowledge their selfishness, they own their power, not to become narcissists, but to become whole. Jung called it selective shadow incorporation, taking what was denied and weaving it into conscious strength. Metamorphosis 4, the emergence. Empathy returns, but refined. Now, they can feel without fixing, detect manipulation without rage, love without losing themselves. They are no longer compulsive healers, they are conscious vessels, able to hold another's pain without drowning in it. Metamorphosis 5, the sovereignty, the final stage. Here, the empath becomes archetypal. They see not just individuals, but patterns. They are bridges between the personal and the collective, between ego and self. Jung called this the ultimate individuation. The empath has become sovereign, not above humanity, but deeply aligned with its evolution. Jung warned, this journey is not quick. It may take years. But the timeline does not matter. What matters is the willingness to face shadow and to choose integration over illusion. In his words, the goal is not recovery, but metamorphosis. And for those who endure, the wound itself becomes the womb of wisdom. The empath emerges not as victim, not as survivor, but as sovereign. So what have we uncovered together? That the empath's journey through narcissistic abuse is not merely survival, it is an initiation. Jung showed us that the empath may be shattered, but through shadow integration, they can emerge sovereign, able to feel everything, yet remain untouchable, able to see human darkness, yet respond with compassion. This is not a return to innocence. It is the birth of wisdom. The wound itself becomes the womb of transformation. But this path is not easy. It demands the death of illusions, the courage to face the shadow, and the humility to walk sovereignty without superiority. And so I ask you, have you felt this crucible? Have you endured the intensity of the narcissist and discovered within yourself a deeper strength? If Jung's vision resonates with your story, share it in the comments below, because your words may become the mirror another empath desperately needs. And if this exploration into Carl Jung's psychology has touched you, please like this video, subscribe for more journeys into the shadow and the soul, and share it with someone who may be walking this path in silence. Together, we can transform wounds into wisdom. Together, we can honor what Jung called the most dangerous and the most necessary of discoveries, that from the deepest suffering can rise the sovereign empath, not despite the darkness, but because of it.